Maren Nietz. Scientists have been recently documenting a wide array of destructive health impacts associated with climate change, largely driven by the use of fossil fuels. This information is according to John Catcher, PhD, a professor at the University of George Mason at the Center for Climate Change Communication, in the article, "The Fossil Fuels Are Harming Our Brains," published in 2019. Not only everyone in this room, but every human on this planet needs a breath of air every 3 minutes to just stay alive. This is why the quality of our air should be important to all of us. The United States should ban the use of fossil fuels. First, I will explain what the climate crisis is and why it's a problem. Next, I will move into a viable and sustainable solution. First, let's go into climate change and how fossil fuels factor into that. The reason fossil fuels are so destructive for our environment is because they contribute to a large amount of greenhouse gas emissions. Fossil fuels are the use of natural resources like oil or gas used to power automobiles. Greenhouse gas emissions is what keeps the Earth warm enough to inhabit. The only problem with this is that in recent decades, the level of greenhouse gas emissions has gotten dangerously high. Some effects we can already see coming into play from this problem is shifting weather patterns, which damages food production, and rising sea levels, which rises the risk of catastrophic flooding. It's a known fact that the United States is in and has been in a climate crisis for years. But the main factor of this is not the consumers, but the producers. According to Dr. Fergus Green, a research officer at the Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change and the Environment at the London School of Economics and Political Science, in the article, "The Logic of Fossil Fuel Bans," published in 2019, fossil fuel companies are primarily responsible for global greenhouse gas emissions. It's come to the point where not only does this affect our world, but it has come to the point of even affecting our own health. Air pollution contributes to a wide range of neurological disorders, including neurodevelopmental impacts in children and neurodegenerative impacts in older adults. One question that lingers behind this devastating crisis is what will happen if we do nothing. By 2100, in 80 years, the world would have erupted into chaos. When storms arise, the air will be too toxic for human lungs to even go outside. Large-scale flooding will be a commonality. All of the water will absorb the extra carbon dioxide, creating a toxic substance, killing all of the wildlife in it. According to Christina Figueres, a Costa Rican diplomat, and Tom Rubik-Carnac, a political lobbyist for the United Nations, in the book The Future We Choose, published in 2020, news stories tell of people living in houses with water up to their ankles because they have nowhere else to go. Their children coughing and wheezing because of the mold growing under their beds. Insurance companies claiming bankruptcy, leaving everyone with no resources to rebuild their lives. Now that we have established that this problem is dangerously relevant, let's move on to a possible solution that could save us from this terrifying possibility. A ban on the use of fossil fuels is very possible within the United States government. Currently, the United States government is trying to put a ban on fossil fuel subsidies. Fossil fuel subsidies is the tax that makes producing oil and gas less expensive for the individual companies. Currently, United States citizens pay $20.5 billion per year due to this tax. According to the Committee on Oversight and Reform, a committee within the United States legislation for the House of Representatives, in the hearing, "The Role of Fossil Fuel Subsidies in Preventing Action on the Climate Crisis," published in 2021, the United States production of fossil fuel subsidies increases hydrocarbon consumption, the adverse of public health, climate change, and labor productivity losses. All of these issues are directly stemmed from the use of fossil fuels. since we know that climate change has many factors, but one of the largest and most attainable to change is fossil fuels. According to Brett Christophers, a professor at the University of Uppsala in the Department of Social and Economic Geography, in the article, How Institutional Investors Think About Climate Change and Fossil Fuel Risk, published in 2019, climate change is such a broad problem with so many factors that environmental activists in recent years have shifted focus to fossil fuel companies and products directly. By ridding the world of fossil fuels, it will cut the number of greenhouse gas emissions in half. Looking forward about 80 years, will this long term save our world? By putting a ban on the use of fossil fuels, it will not dissolve the climate crisis entirely, but it will help. This is just the first step that we need to take to start taking better care of our world. First, I talked about what the climate crisis is and why it's a problem. Then I moved into a viable solution. The United States should put a ban on the use of fossil fuels. It is evident that our world needs change. If we want our future generations to not be bombarded by the degrading health conditions following the research our scientists are funding right now, we need to start to take that first step towards a better tomorrow.